Good morning, everyone. I'm glad that you've taken the time to come back. This morning I will be cooking a favorite recipe that's really quick, German pancakes. And I've gathered everything up almost, and we will be back shortly. So here we are. I've gathered up all the ingredients and I'm preparing to make the German pancakes with buttermilk syrup of all things. It's delicious and it's definitely worth the little extra time, although this whole thing can be accomplished in 20 minutes. So the very first thing we're going to do is to take a 9 by 13 baking dish. It could be a glass like this, or it could be a metal one. I've added 2 tablespoons of butter into the bottom, and I'm just going to pop that in to a 400-degree oven. Really, we just want to get the butter melted in the bottom of the pan, and this recipe only will allow that much time before the butter gets burned. So we're going to start off in a blender. Now you could do this in a food processor too, that wouldn't be a problem, but I find for what I'm doing this is the easiest way to go. So I'm going to break 6 eggs into a blender, and if I were smart I would probably be doing this over a bowl so that it would be easier to pick out any eggshells that might get into my mixture, because it would be the devil to pick them out afterwards for sure. I'm talking and not counting. 4. Good thing I started with a dozen. 5, 6. I'll set that aside. Now into the bowl next I'm going to add 1 cup of flour, and 1 cup of whole milk, and a half a teaspoon of sugar. Now I'd like to tell you that my German grandmother taught me this recipe, but that wasn't the case. Jenny Allen was my grandmother, and she wasn't much of a cook. She always said she would sooner shovel the barn than cook, and it showed in her cooking. So I had to learn this from somebody else later on down the road. I've just added that half teaspoon of salt. I'm going to put the lid on. I'm going to hit mix, and I'm going to check the pan in the oven while this is mixing a minute. Sometimes the flour doesn't go down right away, so you'll need to coax it a little bit. Now, not all my grandmothers were poor cooks. I had the opportunity to have had 3 grandmothers, because my mother started out her life a little bit more difficult. Her father passed away when she was just a month old, so she was given up for adoption, and at that point a family from Castledale adopted my mom, and she was raised by them. In later years, my mom and her birth mother got together, and I know that they shared many great recipes, because Janet Hill was a really great cook, but so was Granny Cuffling, Mom's adopted mother. So I had lots of opportunities to learn from some great cooks. That's all there is to that. It took me more time to scrape it down than it did to do anything else. Now we'll put it into the glass pan. We're just going to pour it in the way it is. And I will be right back and we'll start on the syrup. So no tricks here. This is what it looks like as I'm preparing to put it in the oven. It's just as it was when it came out of the thing. Now you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised what it looks like when it comes out of that oven. It's an interesting morphosis it goes through while it's in there. Now let's get started on the syrup. Now in this small saucepan on the stove, I have half a cup of butter. I have 1.5 cups of sugar. There is 1/2 teaspoon of salt. There is 1 teaspoon of baking soda. There is 3/4 cup of buttermilk. Now today, I had to do a couple of substitutions. So there is also 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. I have no cornstarch today. So really the reason that you need to put something like cornstarch in there is just to give the sugar something to bind to so that it will become fluid and that it will not crystallize on you. So today I had syrup in the cupboard, so I used syrup, but you could also use honey in the place of corn syrup. I have also in here substituted the buttermilk because I realized at the last moment I didn't have any buttermilk. So the way that you can substitute buttermilk is to take 1 cup of regular milk, put in about 1 teaspoon of white vinegar or lemon juice, and this helps to change the, I think it's the lactic acid in the milk, and it makes the regular milk sour. It's not really soured, but it changes the makeup of the milk and makes it work perfectly for recipes like this. Now, because there's so much sugar in this recipe, you need to not leave it sitting on the stove by itself or it'll scorch. Our goal here is to bring this to a lovely amber color, like toffee color. And it really doesn't take that long. In fact, we will have this cooked and off the stove before the German pancakes have completed cooking. I suppose I'm probably getting in your way here with the handle. Oh no, maybe not. So this is one of those old-fashioned things that our grandmas probably would have made in their grandmas. In fact, the old recipe that I have for this calls for measurements in teacups instead of regular cups, which was the way a lot of the old recipe books, you know, from more than 100 years ago had things measured, was by teacup. So just about there. You can see it's getting quite amber. Now, when I get this off the stove, I will let it cool for a few minutes in the pan, and then I will pour it into a glass jar for storage. This will store in the fridge for about a week or so, if it lasts that long. We eat it on the pancakes, and then usually throughout the week, if we have ice cream in the house, Gino will break it out and pour it over ice cream. It's one of his favorite treats. But it seems like each time you pull it out of the fridge, you have to pop it back into the microwave because it sets up good and hard. There we go. So, I think you're getting the idea here. And I'm going to finish off camera, and I will be back in a moment when we've got this all pulled together. Here I'm back, and I've got my syrup all finished. It's hot as Hades right now, but I've put it into the jar, and I'm just going to spoon it onto my German pancake. I've cut my head off a little bit because it was important to me that you be able to see this as it came out of the oven. So I've got my mitts on, and I'm going to get it right this moment. Now, that may not have been what you expected to see, and it will lose quite a bit of its volume here as it sits and cools, but that's what it looks like coming out of the oven. So close up the door, get rid of one of my mitts, and you eat this quickly out of the oven, but you can also take this recipe, make sure that you cut it, loosen it from the pan and cool it well. Put it into an airtight container, and you can keep it in the fridge for up to 3 days, which means that if you wanted to have leftover pancakes tomorrow, you would be able to do that. Now, they brutally stick to the pan sometimes. I'm not sure why. They do. Oops. But they do. And this is one way that you can make pancakes for quite a few people, because you can, put the pans in the oven, add extra, and be all ready for a crew. So I'm just going to give this bit of a wipe onto the plate. And nope, it's still too hot. So I'm going to get a spoon, and I'm going to just spoon some of it on there. I hope that you can see this fantastic and quick recipe for German pancakes. And that's what we're having for breakfast this morning. I hope some of you will give this a try, because it's really quite easy. It's a lot of fun to make with kids, and they will certainly enjoy it. It's also protein packed with all those eggs in there, so it'll stick with you longer than regular pancakes. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, please like and share, and consider subscribing to our channel. And I will see you next time. Thank you for coming. Bye-bye.